Good afternoon and welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today. As you heard, this meeting is being recorded and we'll have an opportunity to listen back to it or share it with others after the meeting. So I just wanted you all to be aware of that. I am thrilled to welcome you to Keeping It Brief, our second installment. This is a service of the Bucks County Women's Advocacy Coalition, and I'm your host today, Maria Evans. I'm an individual partner with the coalition, as are another 300 individuals, and we're very excited to be able to present this to you today. Our guest today is Caitlyn Roberts, who serves as the Director of Housing and Social Services at the YWCA Bucks County, and she's going to be briefing us on Haven House, which is the Y's temporary safe house for women and children fleeing human trafficking. Can't think of a more important issue. Caitlyn will also discuss the importance of communities offering these safe spaces when individuals need them. This midday gathering of Zoom, our monthly look at opportunity to get a quick update on what important issues are among our partners and our issue specialists. So I just want to begin with a little note about the technology. When you joined the event, your microphone was muted, your camera was turned off automatically. So while you can see and hear us, nobody can see or hear you. So just relax, grab your lunch, a snack, your coffee if you're like me, and enjoy today's conversation. If you have a question or a comment, please feel free to put it in the chat, and then I'll make sure that I keep an eye on that and put those questions to Caitlyn as we go through this conversation. Now, a little bit about us. The Bucks County Women's Advocacy Coalition is a nonpartisan coalition of individuals and organizations that work towards socially just and respectful society. We were founded in 2008, and we were designated a nonprofit in 2015. We educate and advocate for gender equity and economic security for all. And we're thrilled to call more than 300 individuals and nearly 50 organizations our partners. By working together, we can speak with one voice and make that voice more powerful as we work for systemic change. And the day after election seems a fabulous time to encourage people to be invested in creating that systemic change. So as I mentioned, we're being recorded. Our next newsletter will also have a link to this recording. You'll find the link on our social media. Let me give a plug for that. Please go to our website, which is at bcwac.org, and you can find the links to our social media there. So please do follow us so that you're kept apprised of all that's going on. You can also take, when you visit that site, you can see some of our blog posts. You can see the articles that have gone in the news. We have a regular opinion piece in the local papers, and you can have links to those. You can share them. And I would encourage you to sign up for those, for the newsletter and the blog posts as well. You can also, when you do that, get signed up for action alerts so that we make it easy for you to connect with the legislators who can make the difference. So that's what's so important. And you'll find if you go to chat right now, there's an action alert in there of how you can take action today based on this issue. So that's the kind of information we can get you. Now, let's turn to our guest. Caitlyn Roberts, as I said, is the Director of Housing and Social Services at the YWCA Bucks County. Caitlyn, welcome. Tell us, how did you get involved with this important issue and with the why?
Hi, thanks for having me. Maria, you broke up a little bit for me when you were doing an introduction, so I don't know if it's my internet or yours, but just let me know if I start breaking out. So I started working at the YWCA almost 4 years ago. Prior to that, I was doing clinical work for another nonprofit, specifically children that were involved in the child welfare system. So working with foster care children and their parents, either on reunification or towards adoption. So that led me here. I'd be lying if I didn't tell you that the work burnt me out pretty quickly just due to the intensity of the job. But it did bring me to the YWCA. And in my former role, when I got hired at the Y, they hired me to do foster care education in the community. So I thought it was a really good fit since I was formerly working with children in foster care, and then also hired me to do some human trafficking education. And in that process, we were waiting to hear back from for a grant for rapid rehousing. So I was with the Y for a little over 2 months before we, dove into housing services and started doing rapid rehousing.
Can you explain a little bit for the uninitiated, what is rapid rehousing?
Yeah, sure. So rapid rehousing, we work with households that are literally homeless, so either on the streets in an emergency shelter, and we work with them on getting into permanent housing and becoming, working towards becoming self-sufficient. So in that process, that was our first housing program, and then we started to see the need in the community for other housing programs, primarily due to COVID-19, and just, in my human trafficking education efforts, saw the need for, a temporary safe house for victims of human trafficking. So that's where it's led us to now.
So can I ask you, how did you, when you came across that need, how does one go about starting the process of saying, we need this, here's how we're going to go about getting that? It sounds rather complex.
Yeah, it definitely is. So we are a nonprofit, so majority of our funding sources are through grants. So we started to put it in grants for rapid rehousing. And then we just started to see, different other avenues of grants that were available for, victim services, for temporary shelter, and kind of, started working with the County of Bucks Housing Services to seeing if they had any, ideas in the community for, temporary safe houses for victims.
I always find it fascinating to see how these efforts get going. We talk about making systemic change and advocating, and it's can be difficult to see, how we get into it before we progress. So thank you. Can you tell us a little bit more about the problem here in Bucks County?
So when we were looking at providing services to, victims of human trafficking, the YW has a long history of providing, domestic violence, sexual violence, gender-based services to throughout the nation. So we have over, 150 local associations that do domestic violence, human trafficking work throughout over like 40 states. So, when we were looking at the need in Bucks County, we were seeing that there was a, gap in crisis housing, when a victim is fleeing their perpetrator, trying to get to a safe place. There wasn't that, emergency, crisis housing before we could move them into permanent housing. So we really looked forward to see how we could, bridge that gap between, when they're, actively fleeing human trafficking and how to move them towards becoming self-sufficient and, living up to their full potential.
And tell me a little bit why. You said in 40 states, 150 local associations. Do we have other places or organizations that are helping victims of human trafficking here in Bucks County? The people who are fleeing, or is that, is it just that we need more? And is it a growing problem? Or
So there already are, agencies. So there's the Well, there's A Woman's Place, there's Nova. They really partnered with us on this collaboration to bring more, crisis housing and, an emergency shelter to victims of human trafficking. Because the need's there, and each agency only has a certain amount of beds, so we wanted to create more, so we didn't have a wait list, or we didn't have to turn away victims that needed a safe space.
So I know that you had told me when we were talking about how this particular Haven House represents or reflects so many of the WISE priorities, and there's so many of the priorities that we share with that the coalition shares, safety, gender equity, health, economic security. So can you speak to a little bit of that and how each supports the other, and what other issues are all wrapped up in this issue of human trafficking?
Yeah, so I was actually, right before this, kind of looking at, the Women's Advocacy Coalition's, principles, and I was kind of like, this is spot on to kind of what we're going for with Haven House, and like, women must have safe and secure housing. So Haven House gives them that safe and secure housing to get, to start their healing process, to start feeling safe, probably for the first time in their life, to start, we encounter victims that haven't been to doctors or haven't, came into contact with any case managers or social services agencies for a while. So Haven House gives them that, solid foundation to start healing and start thriving, and start moving. We always want to talk about, a victim as a survivor. So Haven House is that foundation of moving a victim to, thriving as a survivor, and, getting connected to employment, getting connected to, social services, whether that be, mainstream benefits like food stamps, or, when we first started looking into Haven House, I was like, we really need to provide transportation for our clients. Like, we need to, they're most likely going to come without transportation. So how can we provide transportation with them to make sure that they get to their doctor's appointments, to make sure that they have their basic needs, going to the grocery store, going to a food bank or whatever they needed. So in our efforts, we were able to get a vehicle to provide transportation for clients.
Yeah, that's something I don't think we necessarily think of as a first pass. You think of the place to stay, you think of the food, and the other needs. You mentioned that this is a unique place, Haven House in Bucks County, right? Can you speak to a little bit about how it's unique? And I guess some of the needs that go along with it are because of its unique nature as well.
Yeah, so it's really unique in the aspect that most human trafficking safe houses only take single women, and we are going to be opening our doors to single women and women with children. So we will be accepting women that have children, and I think that speaks volumes, and it opens up doors for victims that might not be leaving their situation because they're afraid that they don't know where to go with their kids. They have no place for their kids to go if they were to go to a safe house. So this really gives them that opportunity to, when they are actively leaving, they don't have to worry about, if they have to leave their kids behind, or, come up with other alternatives for their kids. They can bring them, and we will be providing, case management services for their children as well, and making sure that they're connected with their school, and making sure that they have all their basic needs as well.
So Caitlyn, how do women who might be considering this, as you said, some that say, I can't leave my children, how do they know about this? How are they being reached?
Yeah, so we are, right now, our efforts have really been focused on, community outreach and getting the word out there, about Haven House and about, the services that we can provide. So we have been speaking with the DA, we've been working with other local agencies. We're making law enforcement aware as well. So we're just trying to blast it out to as many agencies and providers as necessary, to make sure that they have the referral form. And if they, need it, they can contact me to get it and make sure that, it's on hand when they do come encounter with a victim that needs temporary housing.
So I understand that you're telling me that, once you do come up with this and it's, has the location and everything, that you get some pushback from the community. And you said some of that's because people don't really understand about the people who are being helped. So help us understand who's benefiting and things of that nature.
Yeah. So when people hear human trafficking, there's a huge stigma, majority of people's information they get from, movies or things they've seen on TV, which really doesn't show kind of the reality of human trafficking. Majority of people think that human trafficking is always a violent crime, where, that's the most biggest myth of them all, is that majority of them, they're not violent at all. They're not being kidnapped. They're not being physically restrained. Majority of abusers, they use psychological tactics to keep a victim where they're at without being restraint, whether that be, manipulation, whether that be, trauma bonding, fraud. It's more, they offer them a better life, so many promises, goods, but it's not as violent as, the media portrays it today.
So tell me about who can be trafficked, because I know that was something that, was different from what you said.
Yeah. So really, anybody could be trafficked. I mean, we do see victims that are, females, males, transgender, undocumented, US citizen. There are different, vulnerabilities that, make somebody, at higher risk of becoming trafficked, whether that, be an unstable living situation, a history of domestic violence, families in poverty. But really, human trafficking can happen to anybody. The biggest one that we typically see is that, a client is suffering from a substance abuse disorder, and they're getting high and they're running out of money. A pimp or abuser, thrives off of that, sees that they need money, sees that they're trying to get high, and manipulates them with that, and, keeps giving them the drugs if they, have sex with all their buyers. So that's, when we are in a huge epidemic with substance abuse disorder right now. So that is the highest thing that we, typically see.
Good. I thought it was interesting when you told me that you've seen cases where, we think about that this can happen to anybody, as we would consider an upstanding citizen. And you've had people who've been related to doctors and police officers who've all had relatives or others who have suffered human trafficking in this way.
And everybody always thinks it will never happen to them. It doesn't happen in Bucks County. It won't happen to their kids or their niece and nephew. But the reality of it is it can happen. And, if it isn't directly affecting your family, it's affecting somebody else's family. And, we're here to provide that support, and we ask the community to be that support system as well.
So Caitlyn, we have a question that came in about how many beds does Haven House have and what's the expected length of stay? Can you talk about the process of, you identify someone, they come in?
Sure. So Haven House has a 5-bed, so we can, assist up to 5 households, depending on if they're coming with their children or not. So that will determine how many families we can assist at a time. And the typical length we're seeing, we're averaging 6 months to a year. So the goal with Haven House is for them to get that crisis housing, to get that solid foundation, and then we enroll them into our rapid rehousing program, which would move them into permanent housing in the community. So the housing market is extremely dry right now. We were having difficulties with housing a bunch of our clients. So we're kind of given that average 6 months to a year. So they have that time to start focusing on themselves, getting stable before we kind of move them into their own apartment and they're becoming self-sufficient.
And you're still involved with them during that process too, right? With the
Yes.
rapid.
Yep. Okay. So we'll be following them. We're also going to, be working closely with Nova, Woman's Place, the Well. They're going to be surrounded by a ton of case management and social services agencies to help them, become a survivor.
So I know you told me about some of the allies in the effort, and I'm just looking at my notes from when we spoke before, and you've mentioned a lot of them, but a couple that I don't think we have noted was the Bucks County Commissioners and CHOP
Yes.
Homeless Health Initiative and the Newtown Yardley Ministerium and Newtown Township and Temple.
Yes. So
any more that I missed?
We've had a ton of support. We really are thanking the commissioners from really having our back, supporting our mission and Haven House. And really helping us get these doors open. We are anticipating to open December 1st. We are accepting referrals right now. So if anybody on this call, has any clients that they are working with that might need this crisis housing, please send, the referral to me so we can, get in communication. December will be here before we know it.
So Caitlyn, someone was asking if you could please walk us through the intake process.
Yeah, sure. So we'll start with, I have, we have a referral for the YWCA for the household. It's just basic information. There is a note on the referral. Please don't put any referrals in for clients without their knowledge. That could be a safety risk if we're calling them and they are with their abuser. So we always just ask that, clients aren't blindsided by us calling them. So it's just, basic information just so to make sure that we can accommodate the household, seeing if they are already connected with resources, what resources they're connected to. And then we would work to, reach out to them, make sure it's a safe place to talk, if we can accommodate them into the house. We would work on an intake, completing that with them. It is a confidential location. So, we ask that they do sign a confidentiality waiver, for their safety and the safety of the other residents there. And then, we would work with bringing them in, kind of just doing a basic intake of making sure that they have, we provide them with blankets, pillows, all that. And then we would do kind of like a needs assessment to see, the basic needs that they're lacking and, getting them immediately, and kind of, the case management, social services aspect that they still need. And that would kind of be a medium to a long-term goal of getting them connected with all those resources.
You mentioned obviously about the tremendous amount of allies. Who else should care? Who else should be an ally? What can we do personally? You mentioned so many needs. How can we help the people on this call?
Yeah. So everybody should be an ally, just because, like I said earlier, if it isn't directly affecting your family, we wish it never does, but there's always that potential that it could, or it could be, affecting somebody else's family that you don't even know about. But, earlier, like I also said, we are a nonprofit, so we do rely solely off of our grants and our donations. So we always are looking for donations for the house. Their basic needs, hair stuff, shampoo, dishwash soap, laundry detergent, really anything that you think that you would need in your household. We're going to need at Haven House to make sure that they don't have to worry about those expenses.
What is this, and please excuse if I'm being ignorant, but when you have people in the system and they're in Haven House, are they pretty much that's the beginning of it and they get through it, or is there some type of rate where they're not always able to complete and go to the next step? Do you know what I'm saying?
So we haven't done it yet, so we don't have numbers
in
exactly
general
for that, but in general, yes. So within the first 30 days are kind of the most vulnerable time for a client that is fleeing human trafficking. That's the most vulnerable time with them possibly going back to their perpetrator. So that's really going to be our time that we're really focusing on just that solid foundation, getting them comfortable in the home, getting them to, trust the case manager, working on the basic needs. And then along the way, like we would start focusing on employment and the bigger picture of things. But really the first month, we're just gonna kind of let them get acclimated to the home and their immediate needs that they need.
Okay. So what is the one thing we can do right now? I mentioned that action alert. So you had mentioned about what can I do?
Yes. So we are asking, just because of the tremendous support that the commissioners did give us during this transition with Haven House. We are asking that everyone please just thank them for their support on, giving us this opportunity to open Haven House and provide a safe place for victims of human trafficking.
And you'll see that link, if you click on chat, which is at the bottom of your Zoom, you can see that link is right there and it'll take you to that action alert. And just a kind of a little support for the coalition. They're the kinds of alerts that you would get in the moment when they are most important to reach out to people and our elected officials so that they can take action that supports some of our initiatives.
Yeah.
What else, Caitlyn? What have we missed? What do people need to know? What's next for you? You're going to build more Haven Houses?
That would be the goal. Yeah, I think, we covered a ton. Like I said, we are ready to open our doors on December 1st. We are looking for a resident advisor right now for Haven House. It is Monday through Friday, 9 to 5 position. So if anybody knows anybody, we are looking for that as well. But really that's kind of our last step before opening Haven House. The house is fully furnished. We have everything ready to go. And like I said, we are accepting referrals now.
Good. Okay. Well, I've just looked through chat. I don't see any follow-up questions. Does anyone have something else? I'll give you another second to plug it in and we'll address it. Otherwise, I'm going to close out and let you know that just these programs, these educational programs, like many of the other things we offer, are free. And while we operate efficiently, we do have some costs. So if you feel like this program and the work of the coalition in general is something of value to you, please consider making a financial contribution. And you can do it through the website, or I'm also going to send you a link to where you could send the check made out to the coalition. And that's also in chat if you're interested. And of course, another plug for the Y and supporting them both financially and with your understanding and your comments in the community so that you can make Haven House truly a safe place. And the issue safe to discuss in the community. So that would be terrific. Just want to, if there's anything else you'd like to add, Caitlyn, before we move on and just close this out.
I think we covered it all. I was just trying to look at my notes too. I think
Good. Take a moment. That's fine. We're so glad that you were all able to join us today. Anything, Caitlyn, that I missed? Because
I think I just want to one more myth, just because we do get this one a lot too, is just that people think when they hear human trafficking, they think that it's undocumented individuals, when majority of the time, realistically, it's not. They are US citizens. So I think if we can get that myth or stigma out of, the community's head, that's kind of the, we're not bringing in anybody into, Bucks County. Majority of them have already been here. And that with human trafficking, you don't have to cross borders. You don't have to cross state lines. You can be trafficked in your own home. And I know that's, people think, and usually what you see on movies and television is that you're coming from another country or coming across state lines, when reality of it, that's usually not the case.
And if someone suspected someone of being, who maybe this isn't their profession, but just in general, well, how do they proceed?
If they suspect human trafficking?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so Polaris Project oversees the National Human Trafficking Hotline. So you can call that hotline number, I believe. Did we put it in the chat?
We did put it in the chat. It's toward the top of the chat if you need it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Perfect. Yeah. So I think that was kind of really the only one thing I wanted to kind of clear up and make sure that people were aware of.
That's terrific. Thank you so much.
Thank
So
you.
I want to thank the Board of Directors for the Bucks County Women's Advocacy Coalition for allowing us to do this, and for supporting issue specialists who volunteer their time to follow these kinds of issues closely and to track the legislation that can make a difference. And thank you all of you who've come today to participate in keeping it brief, and your questions. I appreciate them greatly. All of us speak with one voice when we get together, and we can amplify the messages that are most important to us. And I'd again encourage you to go to our website and see what else you might find of interest, maybe a topic that you're interested in or didn't even know you were. And a very, very special thank you to Caitlyn for giving us your time and talent, and for all the work that you do every day. As some of the people wrote in the chat, as you will see, this is God's work and you are doing it every day. So we thank you for the work you're doing and for spending your valuable time with us to help make a better life for women and families in Bucks County. Just so you all know, hot off the press is that our next guest for Keeping It Brief, which will be on Wednesday, December 1st at 1:30, is going to be Melissa Reed, who is the president and CEO of Planned Parenthood Keystone. So mark your calendars, December 1st, 1:30, and we'll look forward to seeing you then. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.